All right, the wife's desk saga continues. In fact, she was just out here telling me where she wanted the cross braces to go. And so I just got to mark those. I got to kind of temporarily put together. But there's supposed to be a drop shelf towards the back that I was going to make some standoffs out of dowels, or I mean, essentially turned wood. And I was going to bring that to my lathe and actually just turn those on the lathe, but I gotta make 4 of them. I'm not a, cylinder turner. Why am I drawing a blank for that? Right? A spindle turner. And my repeatability sucks. So I wanted to use the headstock to spin my dowels and the tailstock to do the drilling. So I made this little insert to hold the dowels in concentricity to the tailstock, and that I could just measure. I actually had to close the chuck, and I measured for the diameter to get my radius for the corners. And the reason that I couldn't have the chuck closed anymore and actually have a circle was because the inner portion of the jaws of the chuck were a lot smaller in diameter. I could have held the dowel with that, but then it was going to kind of want to wobble. It didn't actually give any rigidity along its axis. Hopefully that makes sense. Once I had that laid out on a just scrap piece of 3/4 inch plywood on the bandsaw, I could just knock off the corners, and on the drum sander kind of fine tune it, and it's actually a pretty decent fit. And then once I tighten this up, we'll just be spinning that. But now I got to go and get my Jacob's chuck and get my bits mounted up into the lathe itself. Alright, with the 3/4 inch Forstner bit in the Jacob's chuck and the tailstock, because that's the actual offset or the standoffs that I want to do. This is actually one of them at length, so I need a hole center drilled on both ends to accept a 3/8 dowel. But anyways, that plate, I just was about to put it in and we'll chuck it up, but I wanted to show, right here. I always use 3 dots. I don't know why. That's just been a kind of thing. But just so you reference one particular spot. That way if I remove this and I kind of dink around with it, in case it is offset, whatever, I have the best chance of getting it in the exact same spot in the exact same jaws. But why don't we tighten this bad boy up and drill that 3/4 center hole. I should have waited to cut that little slit in the, to give it the gap. So I should have waited till that after. So I only tightened it just enough to hold the piece in there, but not enough to close that gap. Let's get to drilling. So now the idea is, I didn't even mess with tightening the chuck it or anything. I just came out of that with the Forstner bit. I'm not even, well, I'm gonna have to loosen it up. I got a little bit of the tear out. Like I said, that's why I wanted to, gotta be able to get the dowel through there. And I can see where there's little impressions. It would have been nice not to mess with that at all, but, ooh, I mean, that's concentric. Let me zoom in. So we're good. Dowel would just slide right in, and it just about bottoms out in there. The actual bore kind of, with the way everything's kind of inside there, it actually gets a little bit narrower, but I'm able to get it down this far to then tighten this up. And it got snugger, but my kerf isn't wide enough. So I'm gonna bring that over to the bandsaw and just widen that kerf out and see if I can't snug this up a little bit. I was hoping not, oh yeah, that grabbed good. I was just gonna say, I was hoping not to have to split this and kind of come in. The other option would be to split it into 4s, and that would be more of a, as close to a collet chuck as I could get, but I was lucky enough to where that closed up. But, let me see if I can finagle it a little bit. See, that's the problem, is that you're not grabbing it very deep. Even if I were to use the little jaws here, they're like a 1/4 inch thick plate. So you're not, so it can be very off, and I am getting that right now. I'm just wondering if that's gonna make a difference, if this is bottomed out, if that's affecting it. So I'm just pulling it off the base, or whatever it's bottoming out on. This was just an idea I had, so, oh, you know, that's probably close enough. For woodworking, I don't know if you'd want to set up a metal lathe like that, but but it's a little bit. You can see it towards the slower speeds. But you know what? Good enough for what I'm doing. I can always kind of try and tap it. I'm not going to put dial indicators on this, but good enough for me to get the holes in the middle of the dowels and get this project done. Alright, I figured I would try and share this because I have these, kind of like a doweling kit. I have these in different sizes, and then I just have some rare earth magnets, and they all kind of sit together in the kit. So everything that would go associated with 3/8 dowels, including the little hex wrench, the dowel centers and everything. So that way when it sits in a drawer, alright, so there's one little tip. But also, let me now just pull some of these off. I have the dowels themselves are, I think they're 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, somewhere in there. But I have the 2 bits for a reason. What I did was I set the dowel against the stop collar on one, and then on the stop collar on another, and I made sure that they overlapped just slightly. That way I knew that my mating pieces, when I drilled, my dowel would actually fit in the hole. Well, that also ensures that when I use 3/4 inch material, the majority of the dowel is through the thicker material that I'm going into 3/4. I hope that makes sense, but I'm gonna drill into the standoffs with this wider or longer one, and then when I go to drill into the desk, it'll be the shorter one, ensuring that I don't get a little bit too close to that veneer layer on 3/4 inch material. All right, now I'll do the remaining 3 of these. Now granted, if I would have made this wider and given it more stability in this direction, that would have been better. This is a quick little thing, but I'm chalking it up to pancakes because this thing, it's about as zoomed in as I can get. She's pretty concentric. The second one was anyways. You know, like when you do pancakes and the first one is always terrible. Pancakes. I rounded the corners because it is tight. It is a little bit tight in this area, and I just didn't want, if somebody catches a knee on this or whatever, but we kind of laid it out, and her knees are actually going to be more over this way, so we should be good on that. But all right, so here's the idea. I love these dowel centers. Like I said, I'll leave links to everything down in the description, but the dowel centers have these little tiny points on them, and you just set them in your holes that you just drilled. And it doesn't really matter if those are lined up or anything like that, because that's what, in fact, I'm just going to make sure to mark that this is my back. So that way, in case these are off a little bit, but the dowel center is almost the exact same angle of the brad point on the matching set for bit. So when you go to flip this over, and I'm just going to center it up here, right there. And I'm just going to back it off of this apron just a hair. And then if you just lightly push on each one of the dowel centers, it will leave a nice little indentation where you're going to sit here and drill. So let's do the drilling. And I just want to share with you, I double checked, triple checked, I even made a little piece. This was actually material left over from the top itself, so I knew it was the exact thickness. Because, hey, we've all been there. That little brad point sticks out further. I've poked a couple holes through tops, finished tops before, so definitely check and make sure you got it nailed in. Another reason why I keep the magnet on these little dowel center kits, they're actually tapered so that you can flip them upside down to use them. But a magnet is real handy to just kind of pull them out when you're done using them. So now let's see if all my holes line up. Would you believe I had the exact amount of dowels left? Well, that's kind of a looser fit. That one might have had to been rechucked. You know what? A little bit better. First pancake. Nice. Alright, yeah, now I'll just paint it with some black and throw some glue in there, and we'll have ourselves a little shelf. Well, that was open. Dave? Can I get your help quick? Now we need to evaluate how far did paint fly. Okay, that was an old fly. Well, it doesn't look like it explored very far-flung places. All right, then as far as the dowels and the shelf itself, I painted that black. I didn't, you guys have people seeing paint and stuff.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
But I added a couple coats of that satin lacquer, and unfortunately I actually ran out of the lacquer that I used for the other parts, and it is a little bit different of a sheen, but like I said, it's kind of a subdued shelf. But anyways, enough of that. So a little bit of glue in each of these 4 holes here. I should have said before too long, I took a card scraper and I just made sure that each of the ends of the dowels didn't have any paint or lacquer buildup, and then there wasn't any buildup or burrs from the holes. That way we'll get a nice solid mating surface. So. Give that glue a little second, just a second, so it doesn't just pop out of the hole. I like it. Now I just gotta let that dry.
That's a good looking top.
Well, thank you.
Expert.
All right, so the idea is, you put your laptop there. This is where you're going to sit. Your office chair is going to be. The wires will come out the back. For when this is on the ground, from typical standing height, you're not even going to see anything back there. And that's kind of the point. Is when my wife comes and docks her laptop, it's going to be like that for weeks and weeks. So she just wanted it out of the way, out of sight, out of mind, just doing its thing underneath. But as far as the concentricity in those dowels, the verdict's in on this, and it was actually making it kind of tough to edit the video and continue to tell the story when I already figured out what was wrong, but in real life I wouldn't go back and do it. But basically my suspicions were correct. I should not have cut that slot in there before drilling that center hole, because I thought I was grabbing it ever so slightly, but it still was compressing it. So when I put that 3/4 inch bit through there, it was actually larger than a 3/4 hole. And this technique, there's really only a little bit of leeway. So you got to be pretty spot on. I could, like I said, I could have gotten away with it if I would have just cut it in half. Then I could come at it from two sides rather than one kind of hinged side. Cutting it into 4, I think, would have been ideal, but then it makes it tricky getting your parts and pieces together because I don't have like an outer race or anything to hold all those pieces together. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts on that one. And if you haven't played around with those dowel center kits, I definitely encourage that. They come in very useful. Here I'm making a little laptop stand or a little laptop shelf, but those standoffs are perfect. You can make them out of just about any kind of material. You can engrave like a plaque and then put a couple of those on the wall, and it's a real nice presentation. I know a lot of times businesses and larger buildings will do them for Wayfinder and that type of signage. So definitely something to play around with. Again, I'm going to do more videos on this desk. I think I got 1 or 2 videos yet to wrap it up, and my wife has been sweet. It's supposed to be a day or 2 desk build, and I think we're on week 2. So. Because I've been making all these videos. So if you appreciate the videos, it helps out a lot if you share the videos and on your social media, comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I will see you on the next one. I'm thinking all the hardware for this has got to get blackened. So I figured I'd show you guys my process on that. So tune in for that one coming up. Later. It had to fall on the floor.